Okay. So my name is James from Varsity Unlimited Tutors. I believe most of you have seen us or have worked with us from your first semester when we were doing microeconomics. So I took you guys through microeconomics, which was basically an introduction to what economics is all about, where we talked about the economic problem that is faced by nations, and we highlighted how that economic problem is solved through the application of various economic principles, where we talked about, for example, the circular flow of income. We talked about the law of demand and supply. We also talked about elasticity, price elasticity, and how that reflects on revenue. Then we did the production costs, where we calculated, the economic profit, the accounting profit, and then we did all of those different graphs. And then finally, we did our market structures, which was the last topic that we did last semester. And then you guys went on and did the exam. So just maybe just a little bit of feedback. How was the exam for you guys? Were the lessons useful? Did you manage to do well in terms of your exam? What were the challenges that you faced in terms of the exam? Maybe that can also just help us as we get into macroeconomics. Just want to hear a bit of feedback for those that were with us in the last semester. How was it in the exam?
It was okay. Mina, I did well.
You did quite well.
Yeah, I passed with the PD. So
that's one.
So the lessons were useful. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Anyone else? Any other feedback from the rest of the team?
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. I am not too sure if you guys can hear me, but
Yes.
I highly recommend this to everyone. I did very well because of the 100% KCQs. It gives you a very good platform to actually go into the exams. So, but yeah, I did very well at distinction. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, it's always good to hear feedback from you guys, because we know that sometimes economics can be a very taxing subject, but we try to make it as simple as possible so that you guys can understand it. So now we are going into our second semester, where we are going to be doing macroeconomics. So macroeconomics is a little bit different from microeconomics. When we did microeconomics, we were focusing on the principles or the theories that mold what economics is all about. So that's what our focus one was, the fundamentals of what economics is all about. In essence, we're focusing more, remember from our definitions, we're focusing more on what is called positive economics, right? Real economic theories. But now with macroeconomics, we are now going to take that economic theory that we learned in our first semester, and we now want to put it into use, into practical use within an economy. We want to put it into practical use within the economy. So this means that everything that we are now learning is now more practical. So you will now hear words like the inflation rate of South Africa, the population growth rate of South Africa, the economic growth rate, the GDP of South Africa, the unemployment rate of South Africa. So you will start to get those things that are practical, things that you hear on a day-to-day basis on the news. So that's what we will be looking at this semester, which is macroeconomics. Very practical. There will still be a couple of calculations in terms of the consumer price index, in terms of maybe the inflation rate, in terms of the unemployment rate, in terms of what's the other calculation? The multipliers under the GDP, adding up figures to calculate the GDP and etc. So there will still be a couple of calculations that you still need to learn. But macroeconomics is very interesting because it is very practical, which means that we expect you guys to have a lot of questions, right? Because you will notice that what we'll be learning will be things that you'll be listening to on the news. Now, for macroeconomics, I'm not the one who's going to be doing macroeconomics, because me, I'm more of a theoretical person. I like teaching theory, but I have a friend and a partner in business. His name is Fortune. He's been doing macroeconomics, I think, for the last 7 years. He's the one who's been helping me in teaching macroeconomics. He has that extra knowledge and extra goodness in terms of teaching macroeconomics. So I trust he's going to be with you guys for the whole semester, and everything will be fine. But at the end of the day, I'm also a core lecturer in the module, which means you might see me pop up here and there. Specifically, maybe if he's not available and you want someone to cover some of his lectures, I will be around. And then maybe at the end of the semester, when you guys are done with your revision, I might also take maybe 1 or 2 classes just to do maybe extra revision with you, just to help you out at the end of the semester. But whatever help that you got from me is the same level of standard of help that you're going to get from my friend, Mr. Fortune. That's exactly the same standard of help that you get, and I expect you guys to get distinctions at the end of the semester. So feel free to ask him as many questions as you need to make sure that you understand this particular module. If you miss a lecture, make sure that you watch the video that we sent through, and I believe we should be fine. Mr. Fortune, are you in?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. James, for the introductory remarks. Am I audible?
Okay, I think it's over.
Yes,
to you.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As has been reiterated, my name is Fortune. I will be taking you for macroeconomics. So I just want to give an introductory remark as well in terms of the module and some of the key elements that we're going to be looking at within this particular module. So within this particular module, as James has been reiterating, we'll be focusing more on the macroeconomic side of economics. So just allow me to screen something so that we can just get somewhere to start. All right, I hope you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right. So in terms of economics, economics is a broader subject, which normally is categorized into 2 main branches that are referred to as branches of economics. The first one is referred to as macroeconomics. And am I audible?
Yes. Sorry, I've made you host to the meeting. I just need to do something. In case there's any noise, you can mute people. Huh?
All right.
I've made you host. All right, sure.
Thank you very much. All right. So as I was reiterating, that the subject of economics is a much broader subject that can be categorized into 2. There is what is referred to as microeconomics. Then there is what is referred to as macroeconomics. So the distinction between these 2 is very, very important before we delve into the subject of macroeconomics, so that we understand the turning point for those that were doing microeconomics, where the turning point now comes in now when you're talking about macroeconomics. So we understand that from, as James was reiterating, that some of you were attending microeconomic classes and you have a bit of a background in terms of what microeconomics encompasses. So for those that might have not been part of microeconomics class, we are also going to be introducing it in a way that becomes understandable to all of us. So economics can be categorized into 2. We have firstly what is regarded as microeconomics. Then secondly, we have the second branch of economics referred to as macroeconomics. So from the first word that we see there between these 2 branches of economics, we have micro, indicating, let me just mute someone here. If you've just joined us, kindly mute yourself so that you do not disturb the flow of the session. All right. So it can be categorized into two, microeconomics and macroeconomics, where when we're looking at microeconomics, we're basically looking at the individual elements within a particular economy. We're going to be defining what an economy is and what makes up an economy once we've understood the difference between the two. So with microeconomics, we were looking at the individual elements within a particular economy, which are micro in nature. So if we're looking at, for instance, he was talking about the theory of demand, the theory of supply. And when we're looking at the participants, we're looking at individual participants within these particular markets at an individual level and at a market level. But when we're looking at a macroeconomics level, we're now looking at it from a broader perspective that aggregates all of the small or all of the micro activities that are happening within this particular economy. So in terms of that, you'd realize that when you're talking about various terms as well within economics, we'll also be having differentiated terms that we'll be looking at. For instance, in microeconomics, we had individual markets. Now in macroeconomics, we'll be looking at the whole economy as a whole. So within individual markets, we're looking at how much production will be taking place, as well as the demand that is available within that particular market. So now when you're looking at it at a broader level, we're looking at what is referred to as the production within the whole economy, which we refer to as gross domestic product. We're also going to be unraveling more on that. And also when you're talking about prices, we're no longer just referring to a price of a particular good, but we're now looking at what is referred to as the general price level. So you'd see that in microeconomics, we'll be studying the effects of prices of an individual product within a particular market. But in macroeconomics, we'll be looking at what is referred to as the general price level, which is usually measured by inflation, the inflation rate, whether the general price level is increasing or it is decreasing. It is also encompassing part of what we'll be looking at. So within this particular spectrum as well, we'll be trying to aggregate all of the prices of the key commodities within a particular economy and come up with what we refer to as the general price level. And in terms of microeconomics, we looked at the individual labor market, where you were looking at various graphs in terms of the supply of labor, the demand of labor, etc., within a particular market. But now when you're looking at it, we're looking at the broader labor market, where we get the employment levels and the unemployment level. We'll be looking at to what extent are we fully utilizing all of the resources within a particular economy. Then we also looked at elements in relation to consumer behavior, where we're looking at demand, utility, etc., that encompasses or that influences the demand on a particular product within particular individuals, within particular markets, within microeconomics aspects. So when you get to the macroeconomic aspect, now we're looking at what we refer to as aggregate demand. So you'd see that the turning point now is the level or the scale at which we're looking at things. So in microeconomics, we'll be looking at it at a smaller level or at a smaller scale. But in macroeconomics, the scale is now broadened or enlarged in such a way that we'll be able to look at the economy as a whole. So you find out that this distinction is very, very important, because it then brings about various key elements that we would want to be looking at in terms of the macroeconomic policies, the macroeconomic theories that we're going to be applying as well in solving various economic problems. So since we would want to be focusing much more on macroeconomics, let's just give a brief background for today so that we might just get an overview understanding of what we'll be looking at. So we understand that in macroeconomics, we have alluded that we'll be looking at elements that are of aggregated in nature. So in terms of that, you'll be looking at the combined effects on the whole of the economy, not just within a particular market, but now we're looking at it from a national economic level or a global economic level, which we refer to as macroeconomics. So in relation to that, you would see that when you're calculating these elements, would also need to be having an understanding of how to measure the performance of these economies, because when you're looking at macroeconomics, you also need to have a measure that you'll be using in terms of assessing the performance of a particular economy, whether it is performing very well or whether it is underperforming given a particular set of circumstances. So we'd also be looking at it within different elements. So now the main question that we need to answer, since we've been talking about micro and macroeconomics, we need to be able to answer the first key question that comes into mind. What is an economy? What is it that makes up or what we refer to as an economy? So in terms of an economy, we understand that it is a large set of interrelated production, consumption, and exchange activities that aid in determining how scarce resources are allocated within a country for a particular period of time. So from the word economy itself, you can see that it alludes to a set of interdependent systems that are available within a particular economic system. So the interdependent systems that we have, we refer to them as participants within an economy. So within an economy, for us to have an economy, we need to be having participants, which are the key individuals or key entities that are key in making up what we refer to as an economy. And these entities have diverse roles that they play within a particular economy, depending with which entity are we looking at. And their existence is justified by them being able to fulfill the needs and wants of the opposite entity. So for instance, we have households and firms. So when we're doing microeconomics, we were able to allude the basic problem within economics, which is scarcity of resources. And why do we have scarcity of resources? It is because we have unlimited needs and wants, and hence that's where the subject of economics comes into play, because we'll be looking at trying to find a better way to allocate the various scarce resources amongst the competing needs within a particular economy. So hence, as a result, you'd find out that those resources that we are referring to are what we refer to as the factors of production, or the resources. So these resources are then combined in order for an economy to take shape and to produce the various needs and wants that are required within this particular economy, either by households, the firm, and also the government. So we need to make something clear here, which is the participants. So in terms of the participants within an economy, these are key individuals within an economy, because they are the ones that create what we refer to as an economy in terms of fulfilling the needs and wants that are available within that particular economy. So we have the households basically represents the individuals that are found within an economy, and these individuals are said to be the owners of what we refer to as the factors of production. They own the labor, they own the natural resources, and they have the capital and also the entrepreneurship. So now these individuals are the ones now whose needs and wants would need to be met through combining these factors of production. And for these factors of production to be combined, we need to have firms or entities that we refer to as firms. And these firms are brought into existence by this particular set of factor of production, which is entrepreneurship. So when an entrepreneur identifies an opportunity within a market, they then start an entity. And the goal of that entity is to maximize profits, as we understand within microeconomics aspect. So in relation to that, you would find out that when firms come into play, they would seek to be producing the goods and services that are required by the households. And there starts the exchange process that forms what we refer to as an economy. So as the exchange process is taking place, it brings us to what we refer to as the circular flow, or to the flows, to the three major flows that are available within a particular economy. There is production that takes place as a result of the combination of the natural resources by entrepreneurship. And as this production is taking place, it needs to make use of the factors of production. And these factors of production do not come in for free. They have to be hired at a particular wage rate, at a particular rent, at a particular profit, and hence the income comes into play. So from production, we get the income that comes as a result of that to the households. And these households, again, would use that particular income to spend on the goods and services that have been produced by the firm. So that is what we come up with when we have an economy in existence. So there is production, there is income, there is spending. This is what we see every day in our everyday lives. You need to have a particular skill that you go with into the labor market in order for you to be productive. And when you're productive, you get an income. And when you get an income, what is the next thing? You're going to be spending that particular income. So that is where the economic process begins, and it revolves round and round within a particular economy until we have what we refer to as an economy. So in a nutshell, these three major flows are very, very important in relation or in defining an economy. So if we, however, have a leakage in any of these, it means that the economy is likely going to be dwindling. You're likely going to be having lesser production. You're likely going to be having lesser income. You're likely going to be having lesser spending. And those are the problems now that you see that most economies are facing because of the reduction in the circular flows that is happening within an economy. And as a result, it creates problems like unemployment. It starts creating problems like inflation. It starts creating various problems like reduction in economic growth as a result of that. So from a micro level, you'd be having these happening at an individual level, but from a macro level, now it is happening as we are aggregating all of the production that is taking place, the production of goods and services from various industries, as well as the income that is being received as a result of that, and the ultimate spending that occurs within a particular economy. So you'd see that all of these three entities here have macroeconomic principles that ascribe to each of these in terms of influencing an economy or in terms of assessing a particular economy's productivity. All right, so let me just mute someone here. All right, they've muted themselves. Okay, so in a nutshell, those are the major things that you'll be looking at when you're studying economics, or those are the major elements in terms of understanding what an economy is. So once we've understood what a circular flow in terms of the three major flows, we now understand what is happening between the two main participants, which are the households and the firms. So this represents what we refer to as a two-sector model or a two-sector economy, two-sector closed economy, where we only have, or where we make an assumption that we only have the households and the business as the only main participants within a particular economy. So you'd see that these two entities here, they are interdependent of each other. One cannot exist without the other. The households need the firms because the firms produces the goods and services that they would then at the end of the day consume. And the firms also needs households because they would need to have factors of production that are coming from the households in form of labor and a host of these other factors of production that are owned by the households. So as this is happening, we see the income coming to the households and they are offering their skills within the labor markets. And as it revolves, we now have what we are referring to as an economy. That's why you see in the middle there, it is referring to that as an economy because that basically entails what an economic system is. So we understand that beyond this economic system, it happens when it is a completely free market economy. What we refer to when we're talking about a completely free market economy is an economy that does not have influences of the government or any regulatory force, and hence the laws of demand and supply will determine various elements in terms of the pricing of the factors of production, the pricing of goods and services, as well as who qualifies to be able to consume the goods and services in relation to the income that they are receiving. So as we've stated again, you'd be having an issue here because there is a diverse set of needs that comes as a result, or aims that comes as a result of these two market participants in existential. You'd find out that businesses' main aim is to maximize on profit. And when businesses tries to maximize on profit, they would want to be increasing the prices and reducing the expenses in terms of how much they'll be paying the households in terms of the labor force. And at the same time, the households would need to maximize in terms of their needs and wants, to maximize their utilities, to maximize their satisfaction in consumption of various goods and services. And in so doing, you'd see that they would require to have goods and services that are provided at a very, very low prices. So that's where the contention now comes into play, where businesses would try to exploit households, and the one with the greatest strength or greater bargaining power would end up exploiting the other. So that's where the government now comes into play, because the government would come in to stabilize the deficiencies that we have within this free market system. For those that were doing microeconomics, you recall when you were looking at the market failures and what causes the market failures as a result of the laws of demand and supply operating without any regulation in place. So you'd see that if we have an economy like this, there would need for us to be having a government, an elected government. That's why you'd see that on the participants there, we had a government. The government is responsible for producing a standard environment, a standard economic environment that is beneficial for all, both the businesses as well as the households, where they put on regulations in terms of the wage rates, in terms of the pricing, so that there's no market failures in terms of that. So this is very, very important because it highlights the importance of the participants within the economy. So at a broader level now, when we've introduced the government, you'd see that the government comes into play in order to correct the market failures. And we understand that when the government is correcting the market failures, it does it in a diverse way. It needs to raise the revenue through taxation as well as to spend on the public goods and services. So the government, when the government is introduced, we now have what we refer to as a fiscal policy, which basically talks about the policies that are enacted by the government in order to influence the economy towards a desired end. So the fiscal policy, basically, usually, if you look at the government budget, you'll be able to look at what the fiscal policy entails, because it is mainly made up of the government spending, taxation, as well as the government borrowing. So you'd see that the government is a major entity within an economy. We're going to be looking at the public sector as a topic on its own. We'll be looking at various levels of government, some of the policies that the government will put in place in order to influence an economy in one way or the other, as well as combining it with other macroeconomic schools of thoughts. For instance, the Keynesian school of thoughts, which propagates that the government is supposed to be influencing the economy by spending within an economy in order to influence aggregate demand. So you'd see that as the firms and the households are interacting, we'll be having various markets that are then formed, the goods market and the factor market where they get the goods and services, where they get the factors of production, that is the firms, and in the goods market, this is where the households gets the goods and services, etc. So basically, now we are having what we refer to as a closed economy without an external element, which is basically the external sector, which is made up of imports and exports. So we're going to be looking at that one as well later on. All right, so let me just move down. So basically, those are some of the elements that we'll be looking at in relation to defining what an economy is. So at a broader level, beyond having the government and the corporations, as well as the households, we also have other markets that are then formed as a result of that. We talked about the labor market, which is the workforce market, where the factors of production are accessed mainly by the corporations as well as the government as well, and the goods and services that are then produced within the commodity market that are then consumed by both the government, the households, as well as some of the firms as well in terms of that. And we also have a key market that gets then formed, which is the financial market. The financial market acts as an intermediary in terms of meeting the various units. We have what we refer to as surplus units and deficit units within an economy. Surplus units are those that have excess in terms of wealth that they would seek to be investing within a particular financial market in order for it to gain interest. And the deficit units are those that are requiring finances in order for them to fulfill their desires in terms of spending. That can happen both from the household perspective, government perspective, as well as the corporation perspective. So the financial market is an important market because it also highlights elements in terms of savings and elements in terms of how much consumption can take place. This is where you get your Reserve Bank of South Africa, your various elements, your various insurance companies, etc., where they are all influencing an economy towards a certain direction. So within this financial market, that is where we get what we refer to as a monetary policy. The monetary policy is mainly enacted by what we refer to as the Reserve Bank of South Africa, which dictates mainly the repo rate or the interest rate that influences the level of borrowing within an economy. So borrowing is an important aspect because both the government the households as well as the corporations, they would need to borrow at some time in order for them to smoothen out the cash flows, maybe that are not in line in some of the periods in which they're existential. So basically, you'd see that at a macro level, this is what an economy will be looking like after we've taken into consideration all of the markets and all of the external elements within this particular market. So in relation to that, the definition of what an economy is would be mainly in relation to the participants that you're having, as well as the markets that then gets formed as a result of that. So once we've come to the realization of what an economy is, what is then important is for us to understand how an economy's performance is measured. How then do we measure the performance of an economy, whether an economy is doing very well or whether an economy is failing? So we understand that we have 5 key principles or 5 key macroeconomic objectives that are used as a measure of assessing whether an economy is performing very well or whether an economy is not performing very well. So the first one that we have is economic growth. We're going to be defining what economic growth is. The second one that we have is price stability. Third one that we have is full employment. Fourth one that we have is external stability or the balance of payment stability. The fifth one is the equitable distribution of income and wealth. So you'd understand that when you're trying to measure the performance of an economy, you would need to have various metrics that you use in order for you to assess whether the economy is performing very well or whether the economy is underperforming. So when you look at the first one, which is economic growth. So with economic growth, I'm sure you've heard the term economic growth many times, either in the news or in any of the circumstances that you were meeting, maybe at your workplace, etc. When they are saying that there is economic growth, what are they referring to? So by defining economic growth, we'd understand that we'd also need to have a metric or a proxy that we use to measure what economic growth would entail, which is normally gross domestic product. So in terms of that, in a growing economy, the total production of goods and services will increase from one period to the other, and it is measured by gross domestic product. So when the total production is taking place, the measure that is used to measure the total production is what is referred to as gross domestic product. So as this gross domestic product is increasing from one period to the other, you'll be having an increase in a growth within the economy, because it is indicating that there's more production that is taking place within a particular economy. So we're going to be measuring this economic growth, also calculating economic growth when you're given a set of figures, and as well as ascertaining whether it's a growth or it's a contraction within an economy. So the metric that is used to measure economic growth is referred to as gross domestic product, abbreviated as GDP. GDP refers to the market value of all the produced goods and services within a country's borders. And basically, it's looking at the market value of all the production that is taking place. So the definition of that particular metric is very, very important, because it looks at the market value of the production, and the market value is ascribed in relation to the prices that would have been assigned in relation to that. We're going to be looking at nominal gross domestic product as well as real gross domestic product, and highlighting the differences between the two. So with gross domestic product, it is calculated from the expenditure method as the sum of consumption expenditure plus investment expenditure plus government expenditure plus the difference between exports and imports. So within the expenditure perspective, remember we talked about production, income, and spending. So spending is an important element in terms of measuring gross domestic product, because it highlights the extent to which the households were able to spend on the households and the firms, and the government were able to spend on the produced goods and services, thereby highlighting as well the extent to which the incomes that they have received from production were also spent within a particular economy. So gross domestic product will be measured by this particular equation here. We're going to be looking at some of the areas where we're going to be using this equation in order for us to calculate. So in relation to that, the C that we're looking at is referring to consumption spending by households. This represents the spending that is done by households from the income that they have received. And it is also part of gross domestic product, because the greater the consumption spending, the greater the production that is likely going to be taking place, because it is placing a demand on the economy. Then also we have investment spending. We understand that firms would also need to spend on various goods and services, especially productive goods and services, in order for them to produce more. So they spend on capital goods. And as a result, that means that spending also is going to be adding on gross domestic product, because it will be spent on the goods and services that have been produced within that particular economy. Then we also have government spending. Government spending is very, very important, because when the government spends either on creating infrastructure or on various government projects, that is also likely going to be boosting the economy, because it will be employing individuals, and those individuals are going to be getting income, and that income is going to be spent on the production within that particular economy, and it's likely going to influence economy from a multiplier basis. Then also we have exports. Exports represents the amounts of goods that have been produced within a particular economy, for instance, in South Africa, and they're exported to other countries, either to Europe or to another country, to Brazil, whatever it might be. And this represents as well an addition to gross domestic product, because it is placing a demand on the local production that is coming from the external economy. So therefore it is a positive. Then we have a negative import. So whenever we're importing goods and services from other countries, it is regarded as a negative on the gross domestic product, because it is an outflow from the circular flow of spending. Remember, when we're looking at that circular where there was production, spending, and income, we wanted that to revolve without any leakage. So this represents a leakage from that circular flow, and that leakage would shrink the gross domestic product, and then as a result, reduce the size of the gross domestic product. So in a nutshell, you'd see that gross domestic product is made up of consumption spending by households, investment spending by firms, government spending, as well as the net export expenditures. That is the difference between exports and imports for us to get the total value of gross domestic products. So as this value of gross domestic product either increases from one period to the other, that is now where we have what we are defining as economic growth. So if gross domestic product was lesser than what it was in the previous period, it means there is a contraction within the economy, and hence, as a result, that would create a scenario where the economy is contracting. So this is what defines gross domestic product. And the second metric that we had in measuring the performance of an economy is full employment. So with full employment, this is a scenario whereby we are fully utilizing all of the resources within a particular economy. Remember, when we introduced, we talked about the factors of production, and we say that the participants plus the factors of production are the ones that create what we refer to as an economy, because the households are the owners of the factors of production. The firms would need the factors of production in order to produce the needs and wants that are required by the households. And hence, as a result, factors of production, or the utilization of factors of production, is another key metric in measuring the performance of an economy. So if an economy is performing optimally, or is performing at its optimum level, it means that it is fully utilizing all of the resources that are available. There is no unemployment within an economy. So unemployment, it brings us to the subject of unemployment. Unemployment is a key metric that we also use to measure the performance of an economy, because it highlights the extent to which resources are fully utilized within an economy. So unemployment refers to the percentage of labor force actively seeking for employment but cannot find one, which means that when you calculate unemployment and you find it to be a certain percentage, it means that you're not fully utilizing the resources that are available within an economy. But however, there is what is referred to as a natural rate of unemployment, where economists agree that at some point you'd be having, to a certain degree, unemployment existential within an economy. But however, the existential unemployment would not mean that there is no full employment, because it is coming from frictional elements, seasonal elements, as well as structural elements that are regarded as unavoidable within a particular economy. So we're going to be looking at different types of unemployments, or measures of unemployment in terms of the perspective. So hence, as a result, it makes us understand what we are referring to as full employment. Full employment does not mean zero unemployment. So we'll be having unemployment existing, but it won't be that much to the extent that it will be affecting the economy. So hence, as a result, that brings about the different measures of unemployment or the different types of unemployment that are existential within an economy. So basically in economics, we have 5 types of unemployment that we look at. First one is referred to, I like to start with cyclical unemployment. So we have cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment, we're going to be looking at it when we look at the subject of unemployment as a topic on its own. It refers to the unemployment that occurs as a result of the upswings and the downswings along the business cycle. When the economy is growing, you would be having aggregate demand expanding, and at some point it would have to contract because of various elements that would be existential within the economy, inflation and contractionary monetary policies that would be employed by the South African Reserve Bank in order to reduce elements like inflation. So you'd find out that cyclical unemployment occurs when there is a downturn within economic activity, usually occurs when there is recessions, when there is depressions, when the economic activity is dwindling. So hence, as a result, it is referred to as cyclical unemployment, and usually it is influenced by the level of aggregate demand within an economy. Then we have seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment usually occurs when certain production is out of season. For instance, agricultural produce, you'd see that they would employ certain individuals during their farming seasons, and those individuals would be unemployed when it is the off-peak season. So hence, as a result, you'll be having seasonal unemployment as a result of that. Then we also have structural unemployment. So structural unemployment usually refers to the unemployment that occurs as a result of the structures that do not accommodate the employment of certain skills within an economy. For instance, we've been seeing this as a result of technology that has been bubbling up. So the technological bubble created unemployment in certain sectors. For instance, during the early 2000s, from the previous century, people were employed as typewriters, people were employed as shorthand writers within various elements within the business sectors. So when these elements of technologies were introduced, people were also employed as bank tellers, etc. So you'd see that when technology was now taking over, ATMs coming into place, now the computers, personal computers were now created, and hence it was no longer a unique skill that a person could really have a bargain in terms of the labor market. So hence, as a result, you'd find out that they became obsolete as a result of that. So the structures that were available within that particular sector were not accommodative of such type of employment. As a result, that creates what we refer to as structural unemployment. And it also comes in from a regulatory perspective, where maybe there are various regulations that prohibit certain industries to be existential, and people that have skills within those particular industries would then get unemployed as a result of that, because the structural barriers would not allow those employment activities to take place. So we are also seeing this now. We're seeing artificial intelligence coming in. We're seeing driverless cars coming in. So people that were previously employed as drivers, people that were previously employed as cashiers are likely going to be finding employment dwindling over and over again because of these types of technological bubbles, structural elements in terms of that. And I was also watching a video earlier on where I saw someone was in the United States. So here we're used to be seeing people manning the gas stations or the garages as petrol attendants. But in the United States, we find out that they phased out that type of employment. You do not find anyone as a petrol attendant. When you get there, you just pressing the buttons and you do everything yourself. So you'd see the differences that are coming in as a result of that. If that type of technology is to come here, it means that all of those people are likely going to be unemployed as well. Then we also have disguised or hidden unemployment, usually that occurs as a result of reduced working hours within a particular system. We've been seeing this in Japan, where they've reduced the number of working hours that creates a reduced income for individuals. And as a result, that is regarded as hidden unemployment. Then we also have frictional unemployment, when an individual is moving from one job to another. the process that happens in between the movements of jobs when an individual is unemployed is regarded as frictional unemployment. So we're going to be looking at the subject of unemployment as a topic on its own, and look at these in greater detail and be able to understand them. So you'd find out that in measuring unemployment, all of these are very, very important because they highlight to what extent the economy is fully utilizing the resources that are available within that particular economy. Then we also have price stability as a measure of the performance of an economy. So with price stability, you'd find out that we're trying to measure the stability in the price levels within an economy. So I've highlighted earlier on that as firms are employing individuals, they would want to be maximizing on profits that are available by increasing the prices. So hence, as a result, you'd find out that sometimes you'd be having price increases that are unwarranted as a result of that, or price increases that may be as a result of shortages that would be available within an economy. So price stability is of prime importance within an economy because whenever we're having inflation, which refers to the sustained increase in the general price level, it reduces the value of the incomes that are received by the households. And hence, as a result, you'd see that it would create a dilemma where individuals are getting income, but that particular income is not able to purchase goods and services within the goods and services market. So hence, as a result, it distorts the optimal operation of an economic system. So inflation is not something that it should be taken lightly. It has led many economies to their knees. Argentina, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, they've been having hyperinflation, where when an individual gets into a shop, he wants to buy something, the moment that they go to the ATM and come back, the price would have already changed. So that's how dire inflation becomes if it is not kept at check. So it is very, very important for us to have price stability. So price stability does not mean that prices are not increasing. Prices should obviously change from one period to the other, but should be changing at a manageable level, not at a hyperinflationary level that would then create a crisis within an economy. So in terms of inflation, we have basically two main influences in terms of inflation, or two main types, which we refer to as cost push and demand pull inflation. So with cost push inflation, it usually occurs as a result in terms of the cost of production. So as cost of production are rising up, it creates a reduction in production and an increase in the prices as a result of that, creating an increase in the price levels and reducing productivity. So we're going to be looking at cost push inflation. Then we also have demand pull inflation, where it occurs as a result of the pull of the demand within an economy. Usually occurs when too much money is chasing too few goods. Within an economy, there's too much demand, but what has been produced is lesser than what is available. And hence, as a result, the goods or the services would be made available to the highest bidder, and hence creating what we refer to as inflation. So you'll be looking at these particular graphs when you're looking at demand pull inflation, where aggregate demand graph is continuously increasing, and hence as a result creating an increase in the price levels that we see on the y-axis and on the x-axis. So these are some of the elements that we're going to be covering when we look at the topic of inflation on its own, which is a topic I think on unit 6 or so, which you have to check within the study guide. Then with cost push inflation, this is the graph that is mainly alluded, where we have the aggregate supply curve shifting to the left, thereby increasing the price levels from P1 to P2 and a reduction in gross domestic product from Q1 to Q2. So this again creates a scenario where the price levels are increasing, and this reduction in production would also mean unemployment within an economy, which is a dire state of productivity within an economy, leading to what we refer to as stagflation. So we're going to be looking at them when we look at the subject of inflation. Then we also have external stability as a measure of the performance of an economy. So external stability occurs when exports roughly equal the imports over the long run. So in the long run, we expect to have what we refer to as a balance of payments stability. So it is not overly beneficial for an economy to have more exports than imports, and it is not overly beneficial to have more imports than exports within an economy, because in the long run, it would be having detrimental effects on the economy. For instance, if exports exceed imports, if we are exporting more than what we are importing, remember we say that exports have a positive addition to gross domestic product and imports has a negative effect on gross domestic product. So when we have more of exports and less of imports, it has a negative element in the long run. Let me just mute someone here. All right. So when we have exports being greater than imports, it has a detrimental effect on the economy in the long run. Why? Because the exchange rate would initially favor the exporting country. For instance, if South Africa is exporting more, for instance, against the United States, it would initially favor the exporting country. Obviously, the rand would appreciate, and that becomes something that we obviously would want. But however, in the long run, the stronger currency that would occur as a result of us exporting more would create a scenario whereby the importing countries, that is the external countries, would find it expensive to continuously buy South African-made products because of the stronger currency that South Africa would be having. And hence, as a result, that reduces the attractiveness on a global scale of the South African produce. And hence, as a result, that makes the local economy less competitive. So that would result in a reduction again, or in jeopardizing these benefits that we're having in the long run into a detrimental effect on less demand on the exports as a result of that. So you'd see that, again, that would have an impact on the exports. It would increase the amount of imports in the process because it would be cheaper to import rather than to buy from the local perspective. So therefore, the local output would eventually decrease, resulting in growing unemployment. But the general price levels, however, fall would lead to a growth in the economy. So you'd see that in the long run, to create a scenario whereby the output would decrease, and hence, as a result, as output is decreasing, it creates unemployment, also having an effect on the general price levels. So then these general price levels would fall, leading to growth in the economy. But however, this would not be given in certain circumstances because you might not have the general price levels falling as a result of output decreasing. You might have general price levels actually increasing as a result of that. So this would just be a gamble in the long run, which is something that you do not want to take. Then also we have, if imports exceed exports, a scenario whereby we're importing more than how much we are exporting. It would initially favor foreign countries that export to a local country. For instance, the consumption that will be taking place within the local economy from external produce, it would favor the exporting countries that are coming from other countries in terms of the productivity. And however, that demand would result in the currency, local currency becoming weaker. And as the local currency is becoming weaker, the price of imported goods would become expensive. But however, during that particular process, you'd see that as though that demand is prevailing of imports, it means that the local industry is suffering. There is less production within the local industry, and as a result, that would create unemployment as well within the local industry, and that would then have an effect. But in the long run, what we eventually see is that the price of imported goods will become more expensive, but unemployment will pick up because of the increase in demand for relatively cheaper local goods. So that is the ultimate effect that it will be having in the long run. But however, now defining what a long run is would then create a scenario whereby before you get to the extent where unemployment is picking up as a result of importing more, it would have created dire consequences within the economy at times that are difficult to come out of. All right, so last but not least is the equitable distribution of income and wealth, which is measured using what we refer to as the Gini coefficient or Gini index. So a Gini index is basically an index that is used to measure the extent of distribution of income and wealth within a particular economy, which ranges between 0 to 1, with 0 regarded as perfectly equal and 1 regarded as perfectly unequal. So you find out that the range between 0 and 1 would generally be indicative of the Gini coefficient within various countries. So in developed countries, the Gini coefficient of 0.3 to 0.4 is quite common, indicating that they have a more equal society as compared to other countries that are not developed. So you'd find out that here in South Africa, the Gini coefficient is around 0.63, if I'm not mistaken. So South Africa is regarded as the worst in terms of equitable distribution of income and wealth as a result of the deficiencies or the differences between the earning populations, the top earning populations and the lesser earning populations. And then as a result, creating a wider gap between the rich and the poor, as a result, having the highest Gini coefficient of 0.63, which is regarded as the most unequal society. So other countries, for instance, developed countries have a Gini coefficient of 0.3, indicating that they are closer to equality. But however, we do not have any perfect elements in terms of perfect inequality or perfect equality within an economy, because those are the extreme ends. You'd find that they will be lying between the two. The closer it is to 1, the more unequal it is. The closer it is to 0, the more equal a society is. So these are the measures that are used to measure the equitable distribution of income and wealth. All right. So having thus understood that, we can just have a look at some of the questions that are usually asked. So this is an extract from the question paper that was written in July 2024. So question number 1 and question number 2, we just want to attempt them so that we can just refresh on what we've just been talking about. So the question that we have here is reading that, which of the following is a macroeconomic topic? So we talked about macroeconomic topics, the differences between micro and macroeconomics. So with that particular set of information, you will be able to answer question number 1, where you see that I see someone's
Unemployment rate
speaking.
in South Africa.
Let me just mute. All right. So let me just, I wasn't looking at the chat. Okay. Oh, I see the chat you were talking about. I see 1B, 1B. I wasn't following the chat. I will look at it later. All right. So we have a question here that was within the question paper from the previous written. Oh, okay. Oh, these are the answers. Oh, okay. I see people are writing B. I was too slow. Which one of the following is a macroeconomic topic? So it seems as if people are really attentive, because the first one that we have is share price of MTN, B, the unemployment rate in South Africa, C, supply and demand for clothing, D, the budget of an individual household. So the correct answer here is obviously B, because it's talking about a macroeconomic element, which is the unemployment rate. All of these are microeconomic elements because they are referring to a particular industry or a particular entity or a particular good or product. So hence, as a result, the correct answer is B. And I see everyone here was answering correctly, and I'm pleased with that. Then question number 2 is reading, in an economy where government aims to achieve full employment, which of the following scenarios would best indicate the economy that has reached its objective? So let's read it again. It reads, in an economy where the government aims to achieve full employment, which of the following scenarios would best indicate the economy has reached its objective? I think I was talking about this one some few minutes before. I believe everyone should have an answer as well on question number on question number 2. I see everyone is saying B. I don't know whether it's still okay. I see so they're saying A, they is saying B, some K is saying I'm looking at the chat. I see D, A. Okay, so there's a contention. Let's look at it again. So in an economy where the government aims to achieve full employment, which of the following scenarios would best indicate that the economy has reached its objective? So when an economy has reached full employment, what what scenario do we see? A states that the unemployment is 0%. Is that true? B states that some individuals have been retrenched. C states that there is high level of frictional unemployment due to workers searching for better job opportunities. Then D states that the economy is operating at its potential output level with all available resources fully utilized in the production process. Let's check the chart again. Okay, I see people are saying D. Everyone is now saying D. A, B, and C are incorrect. D, D, D. All right, so I like this class. This class is very sharp. So the correct answer is D. The economy is operating at potential output level with all available resources fully utilized in the production process. So that is the correct answer. The reason why it is not A is because we've just stated that there is no scenario whereby you'll be having zero unemployment within an economy. You have a certain degree of unemployment, which is regarded as the natural rate of unemployment. So when the natural rate of unemployment is equal to the unemployment rate, that is indicative of full employment within an economy. And it is best described by the economy is operating at its potential output level with all available resources fully utilized in the production process. So the correct answer would be letter D. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of today's session. I don't know if you have any questions. I would open the floor for those with questions, anything that you'd want to understand in relation to either the presentation or maybe in terms of futuristic perspective of how we're going to be conducting these particular sessions.
Hi,
Yes, yes. How are you?
I'm okay, and how are you?
Good.
Can
Feel
you
free
please
to
go
talk.
back to that employment?
Sorry, I missed you a bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you
Can you please go back to the types of unemployment?
oh, okay, okay. All right. Types of unemployment. Let me just move up a bit. Okay, yeah.
Or
Types
can
of
you please
unemployment.
extend the cyclical unemployment, the cyclical?
All right. All right. So cyclical unemployment refers to the unemployment usually that is as a result of movements, up and down movements within the business cycle. So unfortunately, I didn't bring the graph of a business cycle so that you can have an understanding of what a business cycle is, but we're going to be looking at it later on. So cyclical unemployment is usually as a result of the movements within the business cycle. So the business cycle shows us the level of economic activity on a long-term growth trend. So you'd see that at some point, we'll be having the economy growing up. At some point, you'll be having the economy contracting. So when the economy is contracting, usually it is contracting as a result of a decline in aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is the driver of production within an economy. And when aggregate demand reduces, we're likely going to be having lesser production and hence as a result, creating unemployment within the economy. So when the economy is falling into a recession, falling into a depression, we'll be having cyclical unemployment. I don't know if you've been answered.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone with a question? Anything that you want to be clarified? All right. So it seems as if everyone is, let me just check the chat.
Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Please can we try and clarify this Gini index? I think I kind of lost you there for a bit, right? Can we just go
Sorry?
back to that?
Or to the Gini coefficient. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
You can just do that. Okay.
All
So
right.
when you said the closer you are to zero, you mentioned something, the closer you are to zero, and then South Africa is at 6.3, 0.3, right? Can you just
yes, yes.
that up. I kind of missed you there for a sec.
All right. Okay. So between 0 and 1, it's a decimal. Whatever number that you get between 0 and 1, it is a decimal. By a decimal, meaning that it's a fraction of a number, of a whole number. It is not a full, complete number. So hence, as a result, you'd find out that when you're looking at the Gini coefficient in terms of its measurement, it is measured on the Lorentz curve. We do not need really to talk about the Lorentz curve because it's not part of what we are supposed to be looking at. But however, we'll just use it for explanatory purposes. So the area that you see here, which says area A on the Lorentz curve here, which is the difference between the Lorentz curve and the line of perfect equality, would be indicating the divergence that we have between the line of perfect equality and what is existential within an economy. So if the Lorentz curve is closer to the line of perfect equality, we're likely going to be having a smaller decimal number because our A would be a smaller figure as compared to the sum of A and B. So as a result of that, you'd see that as the decimal is closer to 0, for instance, numbers like 0.3, 0.4, or anything that is below 0.5, would be indicative of a more equal society within the world standards that we are currently having right now. And anything that is above 0.5 would be indicating a more unequal society because it's indicating that to a greater extent, we have the greater population not having access to the wealth within a particular economy. So hence, as a result, you'd find out that South Africa, regarded as the worst in terms of inequality in the world, has a Gini coefficient of 0.63. I think it has changed. Before it was 0.68, closer to 0.7. So indicating that it is slightly improved to a certain degree, but not entirely. So in other developed countries, for instance, I think it's Sweden or Switzerland, which is regarded as the best in terms of equality distribution of wealth, which has a Gini coefficient, I think, of 0.34. I can't remember. Somewhere there, we have to go back to the statistics again. So you'd see that in terms of that, it would be regarded as a more equal society in comparison to other countries' coefficients. So this particular question, you can get it in an exam where they give you various indices and ask you to state which one is the worst inequality. So the one that is closer to 1 would be the worst. So I think that is the key point that you're supposed to be getting. Closer to 1 is the worst, closer to 0 is the best.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyone with a question? Anything that you'd want us to clarify?
Hi. Do you maybe have any example on how do they ask questions on the Gini
coefficient? All right. So unfortunately, the paper that I took, I didn't see, but there's a paper before that. I think I'll have to get into my archives. And I think we're going to be covering that in greater detail when we'll be doing other sessions. But today, I only picked this one. I didn't get into the other papers. I should have brought another example, maybe that highlights. So within the Gini coefficient, mainly they usually ask these, they just maybe give you an array of countries with various Gini coefficient indices, and you're supposed to pick the one which is most unequal or which is more equal. So the key point that you're supposed to be getting is that the one that is closer to 0 is the more equal, and the one that is closer to 1 is the most unequal society.
Oh, understood. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else with a question? All right. Okay, so it seems like we no longer have any questions. All right, so in terms of our lesson coverage, we are going to be trying to move in the chronology in which the topics are stated in the study guide, where we start with measuring the performance of the economy, getting on to the other topics as well. So one thing that you'd note, or the one thing that you'd see, especially when it comes to the exam type questions, is this type of module, they require your deep understanding of the economic principles rather than your cramming of the theoretical knowledge. So your ability to apply macroeconomic principles, macroeconomic theories to a given set of circumstances is the one that would score you more marks as opposed to being able maybe to cram certain definitions, etc., which is important. But however, what is important is the ability to apply. That's why you see that this particular paper usually comes in a multi-check question type, where they give you different options within a given set of answers where you're supposed to be choosing the best solution. So your ability to apply is what is mostly required as opposed to maybe cramming the definitions, etc. So that's what makes this particular module slightly challenging, but not entirely, because it wants you to apply rather than to relay maybe definitions, etc. If it was essay questions, maybe you'd see that maybe you might come in with an argument, etc. But in this one, it's either you know or you don't know. So that's where the dilemma now comes into play. All right, so I think since there are no more questions, I think we can call it a day. Thank you very much for attending today's sessions. I believe James would advise you on what comes next in the further sessions to come. Let me just open, maybe someone else has a question before I close. All right, so there are no questions. All right, thank you very much for attending today's sessions. Until we meet again, goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, bye.